This is Chad Barron. You're listening to My Alien Life.
And I noticed that it had a dome-shaped top and a rounded bottom, and it was not touching the ground. I felt this sharp pain in my eye, and then I had this telepathic voice that said, "Look straight ahead, do not look at the lights."
Those kind of speeds exist in our galaxy, and this object came from outside of our solar system. Any random object that wasn't part of our solar system happened to be traveling in the direction of our solar system. It can easily traverse our solar system with a speed that's incredibly large.
It had been tested on lab mice, and it didn't kill them, and so I wasn't really that leery about it.
I can see there's a fear on his face, and he took off, we took off, so something was wrong there, man. Something was wrong there, man. They cut into something that they didn't know. They didn't know what was wrong there, man, and there was some problems.
My Alien Life is recorded high atop the Northern Rocky Mountains and is heard all over the world, and you can listen everywhere fine podcasts are found. My website is www.myalienlifepodcast.com. There you'll find links to every episode, stories, photos, the My Alien Life Legends page, and much more. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and consider becoming a patron while you're checking out all the content. I'm your host, Cameron Logan. This is My Alien Life, and the podcast starts right now.
My Alien Life Podcast.
Three, two, one, zero, and liftoff.
Put out another book.
Yeah, I did.
Wow. So that's number 6? Is that right?
9.
Oh,
yeah, it's 9. I put out a lot of smaller books, part of a series years ago, and they're actually not in print anymore. But I've got 4 in print at this present time.
Well, so what's it like when you have books that are out of print? I mean, do you have a favorite back then you just wish was still kind of out in the forefront, or?
Not necessarily.
I mean, but there's got to be a couple babies back then that you're very fond of.
No,
maybe, I don't
not
know.
Really.
Really?
These were kind of anthology books. They were the I called them the Encounters series. It was there were 5 smaller books. And actually, I think the publisher is going to take all 5 of those, condense them, and edit and put them into a larger volume. So I don't know what's going to happen.
Right. So you're very prolific as a writer. You have one started already for the next go around?
Not really.
Really?
No, I got a bunch of ideas, but I haven't really started writing outlines or anything down yet.
Well, it's good to know that you have a life. Glad you had time to. I know you do a lot of shows, and I'm glad you're here tonight. But let me talk quickly before we talk about your latest book. Talk about Phantoms and Monsters Research Team, because I'm not really familiar with that. I'm familiar with the website and kind of introduces you to the website. Talk about that and what that is.
Well, a couple years ago, as we started getting deep into this Chicago Phantom, Chicago Mothman phenomena, I decided that it'd probably be a good idea to put together a regular team of folks I could depend on to get boots on the ground at a location somewhere in North America. If I got a report, and of course, what we were doing up the upper Midwest, So that's how that was kind of the nexus of it. And as time has gone on, it's kind of, we had people come and go, but we kept around anywhere between the 12 to 15 people as part of the team. And we also have about 25 affiliate groups as well. So it comes in handy when I'm getting get a report that I want to get someone in front of a witness and talk to them, see what they feel about the witness themselves. And, just get their opinion, get some more in-depth information, because usually when you're in front of someone, you can usually get more information. Not that I want them to embellish on anything, but sometimes you can make suggestions to them eye to eye, and some things will come out. And that's what I'm looking for. And I think I've got a pretty good group of folks right now. So so it's coming pretty handy. It's the Phantoms and Monsters Fortean research team.
So do you limit your scope and focus, or are you open to anything paranormal as far as what you're going to investigate, and how do you decide?
Anything I think is valid, anything I think has got some validity, but some real interest in it. Of course, all cryptids, if it's a haunting that's intense, something a little bit different, a UFO or possibly alien type experiencer report. Yeah, I mean, if I can get the right person there to look into it, or if I, it's almost an extension of the blog itself, reports that come into me. So that's basically what it is.
You bet. So what's the vetting process, and how do you go about deciding which I realize that you absolutely have to decide, and there's so many things happening out there right now, you can't cover them all. But so what's the vetting process?
Well, basically, if the individual contacts me, I want to talk, they'll send me something in the email. I will want to talk to them by phone, get some idea of what they're talking about, how they sound, how they just give the description, if they stick to their story. And that's usually, by that time, I can usually make a determination if it's valid or they're trying to pull the wool over my eyes. It's just like any other type of thing where you got to separate the wheat from the chaff. So I do give the witnesses the benefit of the doubt until I discover otherwise. I look at the fact that they took the time to contact me, and in doing so, they're putting their confidence in me, and then I actually become part of the actual incident as being an investigator. So I take it very seriously. And, when we do an investigation, we're very confidential. We do not disclose personal information, despite what other people tried to get out of you. And believe me, it's so unbelievable how other investigators and enthusiasts want you to give out personal information so they can start going into the area and start looking into things. Right. And that happens a lot. We're very careful about that.
So obviously you're collecting information out there and you're making a determination, maybe making some recommendations. What do you do with that information?
Well, I mean, a lot of times it'll end up with permission of the witness if I'll put it on the blog. If not, I mean, we do follow up and continue. And I mean, there've been cases I've been on for years. Right. It's just not like it is on TV. You go and look somewhere and then stuff just suddenly turns up. You get an explanation as to what's going on. It just doesn't work out that way. And, we're just kind of being dogged about the whole thing. When I get an incident report and I feel it's interesting, and I feel that there's something to it. I want to find out the truth as best I can. So, we usually will stick with it until, there's a reason otherwise that we don't need to.
The new book, The Meme Humanoid. So tell me about that title. Well, how'd you determine that title, and how'd you come up with it, and what exactly is a meme humanoid?
Well, a meme is basically a suggestion. It can be a graphic, it can be somebody's thoughts, or it can be a description of someone. It's usually associated with the internet, where someone will give a story on the internet, and it turns into what you call a meme. It's an idea, and sometimes these ideas generate to a larger degree, and maybe sometimes people can manifest these things that they think too much about them, like thought form manifestation or tulpas. And I think in some cases of these pale humanoids and other similar type of beings, that these may be thought form generated beings. You look at the incident with the Slender Man, where there's two girls up in Wisconsin had thought that even though this was just part of a story of the Slender Man, they took it upon themselves to believe. And to believe in their own minds that this was a real being, and they felt that it was directing them to assault their friend in the name of the being.
So it's thought in the cases of inherent evil that human thought interactions can create some sort of being like that. Are you saying this is happening there?
It may very well be happening. I put the suggestion out there.
Yeah.
There have, as far as even with cryptids and other forms of paranormal, a lot of these may be thought form manifestations. Poltergeists in particular are thought form manifestations. They aren't necessarily an entity or spirit.
Right.
Many times it's a living being, living human, for whatever reason, unknowingly and unconsciously manifest this energy into something more than just a simple thought. And they can create and turn into a more destructive or more evil, like, or malevolent being.
So do you think there's a conversion of matter there, or, the way I look at it, and this is just my idea, and it could be possible, who knows, being that we're all light waves, that our thoughts are basically converting waves to some sort of energy force or focus, for a lack of a better term.
It's possible. I don't know if it's that specific, but I believe it's very possible. There have been experiments in the past of people who have are groups that have used these thought forms to generate a entirely different being or entity. And though it took a lot of time and it took a lot of effort with the individuals, who's to say that one individual can't do that? I think it's very possible in the right conditions. And this whole pale crawler, pale humanoid phenomena has really raised its ugly head in the past decade or so, and there just seems to be continuing and more. And I don't discount that it may be the nexus of some type of new humanoid species, interdimensional being, but I don't think it's anything that's indigenous. I don't think it's something that remains on this earth plane. Is it something that's manifested by the mind, or something that's coming from somewhere else? So I used a little bit of history of other types of beings, like the Fresno Night Walkers and even the Dover Demon, of these beings that people see suddenly or without explanation. And, who's to say that this isn't something that people are actually creating unconsciously?
This is kind of a stretch, but you mentioned the word history, but you also in the book talk about the emaciated pale, hairless humanoids. Mm-hmm. Have you ever investigated this phenomenon deeper as maybe part of a historical or anthropological or archaeological record?
There's just not a whole lot of that out there.
Right.
This seems to be a newer type of phenomena.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. It seems to be, yeah.
Yeah, some of the, as I've put in the book, some of the incidents that have transpired are it's pretty odd. It's really odd. I mean, these people have no inkling of what these things are, and they just show up. And of course, it's just like anything else. They see something like that, and they just don't believe what they're looking at. But invariably, overall, these things are kind of the same type of forms, these emaciated pale beings. And there's differences, but, where are they originating from? So that's the big mystery. A lot of when I write books, I put the information out there and make suggestions. I don't necessarily come up with conclusions. I think it's that I should put the information out there so the reader can make their own determinations.
Is this a North American phenomenon?
For the most part, it is, but there have been some very interesting sightings in Europe. But overall, it is a North American phenomenon.
Do you find it odd that it's North American, or do you find North Americans odd? Because I do find this rather odd, even though we seem to be the ones that think we're kind of leading the pack on this planet, but not so.
Well, I think we lead the pack in a lot of this stuff. Cryptids in general, I think 75 to 80% of the cryptid sightings worldwide are in North America. Bigfoot sightings, upright canine sightings, winged humanoid sightings. Sure, you get a smattering of these things, like saying Great Britain. Well, why is it Great Britain in the United States and Canada as opposed to everywhere else in the world?
Right.
I don't know. I mean, is it because of, our societies that, we're more open-minded about this type of stuff, or we got more people who have bigger imaginations? I don't know. But it does seem to be like that. And, I've thought about that a lot, but, I really had no explanation for that.
Last week on the podcast, I was talking about werewolves, and that's not what the show is about, but it came up, and you just mentioned upright canines. Is that a consistent story? I mean, are people relaying that same information about those sightings as they have been for a while, or do they just vary?
Well,
because I don't hear much about it.
Most of the investigations that we have been here in Pennsylvania, Maryland, surrounding states, but in this mid-Atlantic area. But overall, and I'm going back into the mid 1800s as well. I'm not saying that these may not be thought forms, because a lot of this stuff started turning up when these farmers and the Pennsylvania Dutch and stuff started coming in from the old country. And of course they had the lycanthropy stories and the werewolf stories from the old country. And they kind of brought that lore with them. And when they started setting up their farms, a lot of these things started showing up. Now, why is that? I have no idea. Is this another matter of a thought form manifestation? Because look, we're getting sightings pretty consistent here in the state of Pennsylvania. And in fact, we started looking into this. My partner, who's now deceased, Butch Witkowski, and I have been looking into this since 2013. And over that period of time, I'd say we have 25 to 30 sighting reports that we have personally looked into that do seem like they are viable reports. And for the most part, the sightings are very similar.
How often does somebody come to you with such a fantastical story that you basically don't want to, but you feel obligated because it could provide you with a new lead?
More times you'd probably think. I've had a lot of people come to me in the past with something that I kind of just brushed away and think, there's just no way. But then, many times after a while, they'd come back and ask me what's going on, and I'd start looking into it more and more. I'd start to get convinced that maybe something is really going on here. David Eckhart's a perfect example from my book, Alien Disclosure. I've known David now for over a decade. And, when he first came to me, or I came to him actually, and we started talking, and he was telling me about the abductions and some of the things he and his family were going through. I mean, it was just like something I had never heard before. And I was very wary of it. In fact, I thought maybe he was going through a haunting situation. And quite frankly with you, after about 6 months of daily discussion, it took that long for me to finally start thinking, maybe he does have something going on. Then after I started coming and believing him and getting more interested, he started coming up with some of the photographic and video evidence with me. And that's when I was really floored. So it's been a progression. It's probably one of the more interesting cases I've been involved with. But it's just, a lot of these abduction alien encounter cases are very strange. I mean, overall, they're very strange, and for the most part, they're very unbelievable. But as time has gone on, I've been doing this for a long time. I've been doing this for almost 40 years now.
Wow.
And after all that period of time, you start to see a pattern. And when you start talking to people and start hearing things that are very familiar to you, you do realize that, maybe something is going on here.
So we're talking about the book Alien Disclosure right now. Is that book even a year old?
It's about 2 years old. It was actually reprinted with another publisher. So it's about 2 years old now.
I remember bumping into it on Amazon and reading you do get a look at a little bit of the book, and it just seems like I was looking at that yesterday, even though I was looking at it yesterday. So it's a pretty fresh book, and they're all available on Amazon. I think you have more than 6 available on Amazon right now.
I've got 4 available on Amazon.
Just 4? They must show some older books that.
Yeah, they show some of the older books over there.
Yeah. So talk about the book Alien Disclosure if nobody's read it, and how does that start? Because I try to look at I love to read about aliens and UFOs, but I'll go through it a little bit and try to find something that's unique that I haven't read before. How's yours unique?
Well, there's a lot of things in there. I mean, I actually talk about an encounter I had around the time my wife passed away. I started that year that she became sick. I started seeing a lot of references to owls. Now, I didn't quite understand what was going on, but at nighttime, I was hearing owls, seeing different types of owls. During the day, I would see the references to owls, see pictures of owls, a lot of crazy stuff. I was even mentioning to people on my team what was going on. And, nobody could understand. And it was about that time that Mike Cleland came out with the Messengers book.
Yep.
And I got a hold of Mike, and we talked, and it clicked. And I realized that, there's really something to this about these owls are messengers of other beings and possibly other realities. And I believe now that I was being told to be prepared for her passing. And during that time, I had 2 actual encounters at home with these tall gray beings. There was always 3 of them would show up. I had 2 encounters with those things. It was just like a very brief encounter. I didn't really understand what was going on. Then maybe about a month after she had passed away, I had another encounter at home, and I was taken. Now, was I physically taken? Was I ethereally or astrally taken? I don't know. But I do remember being somewhere and being shown their interpretation of some historical events. So, so that was my encounter. And I was really shocked by it. I've been hearing all these stories from people for years, but, here I was having this very brief encounter. And look, I know something happened because it only seemed like I was gone for like 10, 15 minutes, but I know I was taken at a time to where I was actually returned, and it was actually daylight. So it was like a 5-hour difference. So I know something happened. It wasn't just I fell asleep or dreamed. It was just, there were just a lot of clues as to why that I was actually taken. So I'm positive of it. And when David Eckhart and I first started working together, he told me, he said, I have tried for years to get people to listen to me about what my family and I have been going through, and you're the first one to do it. And I believe you have been chosen somehow to listen to my story and to relay it. And he also told me one thing that really hit me was that they know about you, meaning me. And they have given you permission to investigate what they're doing here with me. And, you hear something like that, you think, okay, I'm glad of that. But honestly, as time has gone on, there have been a lot of things that have happened to me to indicate that, maybe there is something there. And so.
So Lon, what year did that happen for you?
Oh, that was 2000. That was the end of 2015.
So fairly recent.
Mm-hmm.
You think that's over?
I doubt it. I had something happen about less than a year ago that I really don't remember, but I know something happened. And will it be something that's regressed that I'll end up remembering at some other time? I don't know. I don't necessarily recommend people go through hypnotic regression when they believe that something has happened. But, because I've actually witnessed it. It's not a pretty sight in a lot of cases. But I think something did happen, and maybe one day I'll be able to remember what it was. But at this point, I just don't know.
In my mind, I don't think the number 3 is largely symbolic. You mentioned that there was 3 aliens, and with myself, the same situation. With me, it was 1 tall one and 2 littler guys. What about you?
Yeah, I think 3 the letter 3 or the number 3 or the count of 3 has a lot to do with is like you said, a symbolic thing. I have people who have had encounters tell me, they keep waking up at 3:33 in the morning.
Yep.
And I've heard that from dozens of people. And so a lot of times when people will see UFOs, they're in groups of 3s. Yeah, so that does seem to be something that's fairly consistent.
But do you remember if it was one tall and 2 smaller?
They all 3 looked the same size.
Did they?
And they were quite tall. I'd say around 7 foot.
That 3:33 just freaks me out. When I wake up in the middle of the night, I don't even like to look at the clock. It just means something. I know it's back, but so what's the alien agenda? What do you feel is what's up?
Well, I believe, first of all, I believe the human species is a universal species. Now, the reason I say that is, when you talk to people who have alien encounters, or what they say are alien or extraterrestrial encounters, these are always beings that, for the most part, don't look human, but they do have a humanoid form or shape to them. And I think these beings that people are seeing and reporting are either evolved humans and something on beings that are coming back from the future for whatever reason. But I think there is a connection. I think there is a distinct connection between us and them for a lot of different reasons. But I also believe that some of these evolved humans or evolved beings, alien beings, are in trouble, have distress, or have reasons why they feel that they need to contact us or even abduct us. And the reason I say that is, after we're talking to David over the years, he had when he was having his encounters, they were almost taking him on like a tour. He would go into locations, and it was always the same reptilian being who did not like David. He told David he didn't like him. But he was required to show David certain things as to what was really going on. And David still does not know why they did that, why they do that. Because they still continued to come to his home. And he still has these encounters with these different beings. They seem to come in different factions. But anyway, the one thing that this reptilian told David, which I thought found fascinating, was that, like most humans, they believe in a higher form, a higher deity, a higher being, like our God, but maybe something different. And it's just not the reptilian. He said it's all species of extraterrestrials or aliens or whatever you want to call them, even maybe ultra-terrestrials, that they do believe in a higher power. And, thinking about that over time and talking to other experiencers, I do believe that there's a lot of reasons people talk about it being abducted, like for some type of hybrid thing where they're taking body fluids and trying to generate hybrid beings with their being, that type of thing. I get that, and that may very well be true, and it may have a connection to what I'm about to say. But I think they are trying to find the one thing that humans have that they don't, and that's a soul and a life force. When we believe, for the most part, that when we die, we transform ethereally or astrally into a life force. We leave our bodies here and we go to another level. Now, what that level is, who knows? Is it almost like going to a way station, and when another body opens up, you go into reincarnate? I don't know if that's the case, but that we do ascend to another level. And I think that is one aspect of us that they're looking for. I may be absolutely wrong about this, but I tell you, I've got a really strong feeling that there's something like that going on.
So you feel when their end has come, that's it, they're done.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think they know that. I think they feel that there's literally a physical or some type of, I don't know, if that soul can be transferred somehow into them. Now, is that the reason why they have these hybridization programs with humans and their alien types to create these hybrids that do have a soul? Is that the reason behind it? I don't know. Possibly. I don't think I can't really understand why there would be anything other than that, other than maybe their race of beings it degenerated after so much evolution to the point that they need that new blood literally to remain viable. But I think it's deeper than that.
David Eckhart believes that intelligent non-human species reside on planet Earth. Do you believe that?
I didn't for a long time, but I think there's something to that. I really do. I think there's absolutely something to that. I think most of these beings are ultra-terrestrials, where they can move in and out of dimensions, very linear and close to our Earth plane. But I also think there are physical areas on this planet where they go as well. So, and I described in the book where David said that he was taken to caverns and underground areas, that even all planet areas, but places where he saw a lot of different things, a lot of disturbing things were in the caverns in particular. He talked about these family groups of these reptilians that would be living in communities in this cavern, but there were also other beings, humans included, and other alien beings that were used for labor, almost like slaves. And
labor to do what?
To dig, to mine, for the most part, to expand, to build.
So mining for habitation, or mining for resources, or both? I
don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, habitation definitely. For resources, I don't know. That's possible.
It strikes me as something I've never really thought about when you tell me that they could be without souls and they're looking for souls. I mean, that's a new one to think about. There's too much new information. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot, don't you think? It's hard to disseminate that.
Well, after you listen to so many accounts over the years, and you pick up bits and pieces, and you start formulating different theories. I might be completely wrong about this, but I believe that there's something to that to a degree. I mean, I think there is an agenda, and I think that's the big reason behind it, that they want to be more like us.
I want to ask you this because there's so many different encounters and people that have been abducted and people that are just basic experiencers that have so much information out there. And again, it's really hard to wade through all of that because there's so much. But what alien encounter in your mind strikes you as something mind-blowing other than your own that that you think about and you think it's a legitimate experience by a legitimate experiencer?
Well, I think David's very legitimate, but there was one particular case, and I wrote about it early in the book, about this woman by the name of Mandy who lived out in Eastern Washington. And, you know, this is something that's going to stick with me for the rest of my life. I think about it all the time. But one day I got a telephone call from this woman. Her name was Mandy, and her mother. And they lived in Eastern Washington. And in fact, they lived very near the Idaho border. So she, you know, after she, you know, it took a while before she contacted me. And in fact, she had an investigator in Spokane recommend that she talk to me after a lot of these things were happening. Well, anyway, what had started out as they were noticing to the east in the Coeur d'Alene Mountains UFO activity. They were seeing red and white lights above the mountain range. And, you know, they thought a lot about it, but they really didn't understand what they were seeing. And that went on for quite a while. But anyway, honestly, I never asked her if she had talked to anybody else about that or if people had talked to her about it. I don't know. But anyway, what happened was one evening, her and her mother had a late dinner. I guess it was about 8 o'clock in the evening. So it was dark. And they were in the kitchen cleaning dishes when they started hearing popping sounds. And it sounded like it was coming from outside. So Mandy looked out the window and saw these red and white orbs literally everywhere, out in the yard, everywhere. And she went out onto the porch, and these red and white orbs, every time they collided, they made a popping sound. She ran back in the house, went into the living room, looked out the bay window, and these red and white orbs were out in the yard, over across the road into the field. So they were kind of freaked out by it.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
But they didn't call the police because it stopped after a bit. So of course, you know, their mother said, well, look, they're not out there anymore. I'm not even going to call the police officer. So they didn't. But anyway, so what happened was there was an incident that occurred where she was in her room, her bedroom. Her mother had already gone upstairs to go to bed. Mandy was coming upstairs. She went up past her mother's bedroom. She looked in, her mother was asleep. And she went into her room. And all of a sudden, she started hearing all these noises up on the roof. Like something was walking up there, and there was something up in the attic. And it must have been pretty loud because it woke her mother up. And her mother got up and came into Mandy's room. And when she came into the room, the lights went out. All the electric went out. And they're sitting there, and the phone went dead too. And they're sitting there for almost an hour from what they told me, wondering what the hell's going on. They just didn't know what it was, but they were scared to death. They weren't going to go up in the attic. You know, they didn't see anything outside or anything. Then all of a sudden it quit. It just stopped. Then the lights came back on. The phone was on and it stopped. Nothing happened. This happened maybe to a lesser degree for a few nights. That's when they called me. So when they called me and they told me their name and everything and where they were and what was going on. And I talked to them for about 3 hours. And I didn't get a good feel from this. I thought something, this was continuing. This might progress into something bigger. But I didn't say anything because I didn't want to upset him. So I told her, I said, look, do me a favor. And I tell this to a lot of experiencers. Keep a journal, write down what's going on, keep a record of it. Let me know, I want you to call me again tomorrow and tell me anything happens tonight. Because I was talking to him in the early evening, so something could have happened that night. And I said, even if you want to call me while it's going, I didn't know if they had cell phones or what, or if they tried to contact me during. But if everything comes back on, you want to call me, call me right after it happens. They said, fine, okay. So, I'm at home and I'm expecting, because I'm living out in the East, and I'm thinking, well, they'll give me a call tomorrow or let me know what's going on. So I didn't hear anything for several days. And I'm wondering what's going on. I tried to call and I didn't get an answer. Then about 5 days later, and it was on a Sunday night, I got a phone call. It was Mandy's mother. And she was very apologetic to me. She told me, she said, I'm sorry we didn't call you and let you know what was going on. And I said, well, how are you and Mandy doing? What's going on? She said, Mandy's missing. I said, what do you mean she's missing? And I got this sinking feeling in my stomach as soon as she said it. And she said, well, she said, the police told me not to call anybody and talk about this for a couple of days so they could look into it, though they weren't really interested in it. But anyway, she said she was downstairs watching TV that night. It was the night they had talked to me. And she said Mandy went up into her room. And as she was walking down the hall, past Mandy's room, she saw the light underneath the door, so she knew she was up. But then it went off. And she opened the door right away. And she called out Mandy's name. There was no answer. Wow. So then all the lights go out. Then she's running around the house trying to find her. She goes outside all over. And she's freaking out. All her stuff was left. Her car was still there. She didn't leave. And she called the police officers. When the phone didn't go off, she called the local police, and then Washington State Police showed up. And of course, the first thing police said, well, she's an adult. Mandy was a teacher. I think she was her mid-20s. So, she was very responsible. She had her own car. She had all her effects were still there. And, of course, the police are going to say, well, maybe she took off with a boyfriend or something. It's that kind of thing. There's not really much we can do. She's not really missing because, she's an adult. She can do what she wants to do. So, here she is telling me this, and I'm thinking, maybe if you start thinking weird things like, maybe if I had warned them, maybe it wouldn't have happened. But what was I, even if I did, what would I have told them to stop this thing? That's been over 10 years, and I have checked in with Washington State Police, and she's still missing.
Wow.
There's not been a word about her anywhere.
I thought you were going to tell me she's back.
No, she has not. She has not returned.
Have you talked to the parents?
Yes.
How are they doing?
Well, her mother's dead now. I had talked to her mother.
Wow.
I guess the last time I talked to her was maybe 3 or 4 years ago. Mm-hmm. And then I found out she had passed. She was not doing well. So I think they were very close. So, and but these type of things do happen. That was a little too close and personal for me. I'll be honest with you. I almost quit doing this after that incident because I felt bad about it. Though I don't know why I would blame myself.
Yeah, but that's the kind of paranormal stories you don't ever want to hear. Or
no, absolutely.
I mean, you could say that takes it to another level, but it's levels. I mean, that's not even something that I even think about. I mean, I've thought, when you're facing a situation and it's unfamiliar, scares the living bejesus out of you, you do think that this could be it. However, for most people, it's not. And they move on mostly. But yeah, to hear something like that, wow. That's nuts, man. I'm sorry you had to do that.
I tell you, it and of course I had my encounters after that, and
that would heighten that experience, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I got back, I'm thinking, but thank God they brought me back, Yeah. So, it was, it makes you think. It really does. And, I'll be honest with you, when I do talk to experiencers now, I do tell them, if I do get a feeling that something's may ramp up, I do warn them, look, I'm not going to tell you that this is going to happen, but I want to make you aware of it. Yeah. The stories of alien abductions, a lot of this stuff does happen. So, I'm just making you wary of it, but I'm not trying to scare you, but, it does weigh on my mind. It really does.
So I want to ask you this question because I really want to pin it down. And I want to really find out where your feeling is toward this. I mean, we kind of touched on it, but bear with me because I'm sitting here in the dark and I wrote this down now. But are humans a part of an experiment? If so, are we the subjects or unwitting participants, or are we the guinea pigs, or are we something else?
That's a hard question to answer. I know in the end of the book, I stated that, I believe that these beings made us, but they also need us.
But I wouldn't think that you would think that we're allies or participants.
No, we're not. I think, but I think to them, we're the experiment that went well for them. And we're kind of like the insurance policy, that can be used over and over. And that's how I formulate this whole thing about maybe they do need us for a specific reason. Is it that they believe that they can gain a soul or gain other things from us? But, I think in millennia ago, when other civilizations were forming, particularly like the Egyptians and the Mesopotamians, I think those were their gods. But I think they can use us for any means necessary.
When you talk about gaining a soul, I mean, to me, that implies that they would know much about us. So how much?
I think they know more about us than we know ourselves, to be honest with you.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know. That's a good direction to go in. We could talk about that all night. I'm going to think about that because, yeah, interesting. That soul thing is interesting. You have in your website, or maybe I read it on Facebook, I guess, that you're an intuitive and spirit rescuer. What's a spirit rescuer?
Well, you know what an intuitive is. I'm able to connect with spirit energy.
Yes.
I don't necessarily see it. My mind's eye sees it in different ways, but I can sense that it's around me. A spirit rescuer is an individual who, let's say they go into an earthbound haunting where the spirit itself has not left this earth plane. It's here for whatever reason. May not think it's even dead, but it remained for whatever reason that it felt like it needed to stay, and felt it needed to stay here to help, or they died so quickly that it just remained here. But they have not ascended into another level. Right. And that's what spirit rescue is. Basically, you go into a situation and you rescue the spirit. Now, I have done cases in the past where I have literally and intuitively brought, or the angels or the guides or the something else, into the situation to release these beings. But any type of energy, any type of spirit has free will. If they don't want to leave, they're not going to leave. It's just like anything else. If you want to do it, you will. If you don't, you don't. It takes coaxing sometimes, but many times they will ascend. They will go into another level. Now, what these levels are, I really don't know, but I do sense them leaving. And I can also do this remotely as well. And I do these remotely for the most part. But I will tell you one thing. Out of everything I have done, as far as investigating and researching and helping folks, being able to rescue a spirit or rescue an energy, and to take that energy out of a home or out of a location where it's literally there trying to grab the attention of the living being, the living person, which is actually the haunting itself, is very gratifying.
I would think so. I'm thinking about this and that ability. Since you do have that ability, it'd make you very attractive to aliens who actually want a soul or a spirit.
Now, you're right. And, I a lot of times when I do this, and when I've done it with other people as well, the individuals who are going through these hauntings or going through these experiences are what I call beacons. And what a beacon is someone who is open enough to be able to for these energies to know or to contact them or to sense that they can see them and feel them. And that's why I think a lot of hauntings occur, because certain people have sensitivities and abilities to detect these entities. And I think the entities do realize that. And when that does happen, I think they try to grab their attention. Thus, there's the haunting, because it's causing issues. There have been times, literally, when I have been laying down going to sleep, and it's like that period of time just before you go to sleep.
Yeah.
There's like a window opening up, and you've got all kinds of different energies.
Yes, you do.
Bugging the living hell out of you, trying to get your attention.
Right.
It does happen.
Right. Absolutely.
My description of it is astral chatter. And that's what it's like. You hear voices, you see things, and it's very annoying, but it does happen. And a lot of beacons, a lot of people who have these abilities go through the same thing.
You certainly are in a position then to open up and receive information or whatever, whether you want to or not sometimes.
Well, that does happen.
You also have on the Facebook page, Malevolent Non-Terrestrial Entity Mitigation. Explain that one. I love that statement, but what is it?
Yeah, you're looking at the Astral Perceptions Facebook page.
Right.
That's and that's what I call it. When I go into a situation where there's a supposed haunting, it's not always a haunting with an energy or an earthbound energy. A lot of times it's something other than that, a non-terrestrial energy, non-terrestrial being. A lot of times I think there's a fine line between non-terrestrials and human life force. I really do. I mean, there have been cases where it kind of intermingled.
Super interesting stuff. You obviously care enough about winged cryptids that you wrote at least 2 books that I know of. What's your attraction there and why?
Well, I don't know why these winged humanoid Chicago Mothman sightings have landed on my lap the way they have, because it does seem to have happened that way. Now, I work with 2 other individuals, Tobias Whalen and Manuel Navarrete. Manuel and I have been doing this together from the very beginning, but Tobias, since 2011, but Tobias got into it a little bit later. But we work together on these. But anyway, we seem to be the people that are getting these sighting reports. Now, why that is, I don't know. I think people are just finding on the internet, and when they have an encounter, they contact us because, look, because of SEO and everything else, you put in their winged humanoid, the first thing comes up is one of us 3. But anyway, I had an encounter in 1988 of something very similar to what was seen in Chicago. And I've had people tell me, and I think it may very well be something to it, that maybe I was predestined to start getting these reports. I don't know. It seems awful strange, because what I saw, myself and 2 other people saw together, is very similar to what people are describing in the Chicago region.
That was in 1988. And then, So what exactly did this look like?
Well, I if you want the story, I'll tell you the story.
Tell me the story.
Yeah, I was living in Baltimore at that time, and I was at a Boy Scout exposition north of Baltimore City, and I came across a guy who was a friend of mine when we were in high school. In fact, we were in Boy Scouts together, and he had his own troop, but he was there working with some of the kids that were in his troop. And we saw each other. We got together, started talking. We had some lunch. And in fact, he and I used to camp out on the Gettysburg battlefield as kids. Mm-hmm. And he knew I was into the paranormal back then, because he knew I saw a lot of different things. And so he knew a bit about my background. But anyway, we were sitting there talking. He said, look, I've got something going on up at the old Camp Conewago. And this was a place we used to go to when we were boys. Up at old Camp Conewago, that nobody understands what it is. They don't know have no idea what it is. That during this and this was during I met him during the fall. He said, during the summer, a lot of times these troops would be out in the woods of the campground, and they'd be hearing these god awful screaming sounds, and it would scare them, and they pack up and leave out of there. And it happened more than once, happened many times, and nobody can understand what it was. He said, this friend of mine and I are going up there next weekend. Do you mind coming up with us? I said, no. I said, that's fine with me. So I went ahead and met them up the next Friday. We hiked out into the woods, went into the area where these other troops had been camping, set up our 3 tents, and, set camp up. First night, very uneventful. And in fact, but we did, the next morning when we woke up, the other guy who was with us asked us if we had heard something walking around the campsite. I did. I thought maybe it was one of those guys getting up, going in the woods, relieve themselves of what was going on. But apparently it wasn't. but nothing was disturbed in the campsite, so we didn't think much of it. So that Saturday, we spent most of the day in the woods, and what we were doing, we were camping up and down the whole area, maybe trying to find clues as to what was going on, why these screaming sounds were happening. We were going a while. We were going, I'd say 5 or 6 hours, and we got back. It was just starting to become dusk. And we sat down, made some dinner, and just were sitting around our campsite talking. Nothing's going on. I didn't sense anything. I didn't feel anything was going on. But I'd say about 10 o'clock that night, we heard this screaming sound. Now, I didn't think much of it because I could have been the wildlife, and a lot of wildlife out there. I thought maybe it's an owl or a hawk or something. I don't know. It didn't really sound that unusual to me, so we just kind of brushed it off. But about an hour later, we heard this horrific, shrill scream that sounded like a woman or a child screaming, and it was loud. And it sounded like it was going in and out, like it was coming and going away from us. I mean, it was really bad. And I mean, it sent chills up and down my spine. And we're sitting here wondering what the hell we just heard, and thinking, well, yeah, this is probably what these troops are hearing. So, so we sat there and decided, well, we're going to spend the night. We're going to stay up and see if anything shows up. So we're sitting there. After, I guess, about 45 minutes or so, I got up. I was just stretching my legs. I walked out onto the trail, which was just beside the creek was right there too. And it was very brightly lit night too. I don't think it was a full moon, but it was very, well lit. I could see into the creek and I could see into the woods. But, I'm there thinking, man, I got this funny feeling like something's watching us. So I went on back and I told those guys, look, let's grab our flashlights and go out to the trail and walk a bit and see if we see anything. So they apprehensively got up and we all formed a line and walked up and down when they're ready to walk up and down the trail. But we didn't get 50 feet away from that campsite. And we all three saw it standing in the creek, and it had these big red eyes. Wow. It was a dark shape. And by the time we got this flashlight on it, this thing jettisoned in the air with a whooshing sound. And we heard it as it reached an apex, I suppose. And it let out a terrible scream. And it it faded away from us. Well, we ran back to the campsite. We didn't know what the hell we just saw. We're sitting there. My buddy's not talking. He's freaked. The other guy and I are talking. He said, he asked me, he said, did you notice anything on its back? And I did. It looked like some type of wing structure or something on the back, but I never saw any wings open up. But I was pretty sure it was wings of some type. So we're sitting here talking. We all saw the red eyes. I mean, the eyes were almost like not reflected, like something had two red spotlights on its head. This thing was dark, and it was about 6 foot tall. It was standing in the creek, and the creek was real low that time of year too. So, but we got a good look at the form. Anyway, my buddies, he finally started talking and said, look, I'm not sleeping down here tonight, so I'm going to the administration building. So they both did. They went up to the administration building and slept. I stayed up. I was up there. I wanted to see this thing. But, of course, nothing ever showed up. So I kind of held on to that story for a long time. I told a few people about it. But back in 2008, just 20 years later, I wrote about it on the blog. Mm-hmm. And I put it in pretty specific detail. And I started getting response. The first response I got was from a guy who lived in Dick's Dam, who was just downstream from there. He said, I've been hearing that screaming sound for over 20 years. I've never known what the hell that was. I've never heard anybody tell me anything about anything. He said, so I imagine that's what it was. So I thought, well, that's great. That's at least somebody acknowledged hearing it. But then I got another email, and I got it from a scout master, a troop leader, who said he and his troop had been out to Camp Conewago very recently. And one day during the day, the kids went up the trail, were just out screwing around during the day. And they all came running back, freaked out, telling him that they saw a dragon. And, the first thing he's thinking, well, they're trying to pull my leg.
Right.
He said, but, they were serious about it. But, I never really thought much about it. Now that I read what you posted, maybe it did see something. Well, anyway, in subsequent years, up until about 3 years ago, I've had 5 sighting reports of this same thing on Conewago Creek. Now, the interesting thing is what people in Chicago are seeing is very similar to what we saw. For the most part, the red eyes, the dark, thin, emaciated body, and the ability to jettison without using its wings.
Right.
So, this makes me think that, was I destined to get these reports? I don't know. I've always been interested in the Mothman and the winged humanoid phenomena. So I don't know if that has any bearing on it. But this whole thing has been, this is probably the investigation of a lifetime, because, we've been working on this now it started 2011, but it really started picking it up in 2017. So, and it's still going on. We're still getting reports, in particular around O'Hare International now. That's where most of the reports are coming from.
Amazing, man. You've led quite a life.
Yeah. I guess I'm
and
lucky.
You're still doing it after 40 years.
Yeah.
So if we're going to point somebody in your direction to get more information about you, or where they find you online, where?
Well, they can go to the website, which is phantomsandmonsters.com, or they can contact me at Lon Strickler at phantomsandmonsters.com. I do have a radio show I do every Friday night at 9:00. Phantoms and Monsters Radio. Just put it into the YouTube search. We do a live show every Friday night. And of course, cryptidhunters.org is the website for Phantoms and Monsters Fortean research. And we try to keep everything up to date on what we're working on. And that's where you can find all the information about us.
Cool, brother. Lon Strickler, thank you so much for joining me.
Well, thanks for having me.
You can find my website at www.myalienlifepodcast.com, and please subscribe to my latest downloads at iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, and at podbean.com. And please follow me and like me on Facebook and Twitter. My Alien Life is written and produced for broadcast at Studio 254 in the Northern Rocky Mountains. The music you are hearing is produced and created by Elion. You can find all Elion's work online at Heart Dance Records.